Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Center of Destiny podcast. Today, we have a very special conversation with my sister, Saige Esmaili, from the Rosewater Temple. She's calling in from Big Island today. And this woman is so potent. She is a temple keeper, land steward, a designer, a teacher and leader in feminine embodiment, in oracular and priestess arts. She is also a mother of two special, beautiful children. And she's a dragon sister. I got all my dragons coming onto this show. I'm so grateful. And yeah, thank you, Saige, first and foremost, for being here, for saying yes to allowing this episode to be a vehicle for a greater truth that you're traversing and to ultimately offer your experience and your embodiment as a way to empower and to reflect to those listening. What you're traversing and what the nature of this conversation is about today is so deep. It really hits the heart of our humanity. It hits the heart of our relationality, our vulnerability in terms of the deepest heart expanding love that we could really learn and grow into in this lifetime. And it's a vulnerable conversation, a courageous conversation. So we're very grateful to have you, sister, and excited to really share with the listeners this really unique season of your life that you're traversing and bringing forward on this episode today.
Thank you, Tara. It's an honor to be here. Every time we connect, I feel this light expansion and heart expansion. And we, as sisters, as colleagues, traversed so much. And the divine timing of this episode feels really profound, as we had scheduled before previously. And, as life does sometimes, the timing did not sync up until now. And, with what we're going to dive into today, it makes so much sense as to why, we had that sacred pause. So I'm honored to be here in your masterful auric field and to get to traverse all these realms and get to share authentically what's been alive. It's big potent times on the planet that we're in right now. And these conversations are so profound for bringing some light and clarity to what so many of us are surfing through these subtle layers of the heart during this time of awakening.
Truly, because what's happening in the amount of light that is descending on the planet at this time, and what light does is illuminate that which is hidden, that which is needing the light of illumination. And when that happens, it really stirs up our lives in unprecedented ways. And I really believe that what you're diving into today is a vulnerable and courageous conversation around a retemplating that is happening in your marriage and in your family unit and your village. And for me, when I met you, I had always been relating to and connecting to a version of Saige, a version of Saige who was, correct me if I'm wrong, but married for 11 years, who is raising her two special light being children on the island and very much revillaging, very much tending to land and land projects, architectural projects as well. And you being really inspiring to me as a new earth mother, as someone who's really embodying the thing that a lot of us in community around the world are orienting towards. And I really feel you as a visionary in this realm. And recently, what we'll be diving into today, for the first time, Saige is telling this story and the season of her life, which is a dissolving of the current form of her marriage and ultimately learning how to parent consciously, how to consciously uncouple in a good way, and to ultimately follow her heart and follow a greater truth, as challenging as it might be and as much projection it could possibly stir up in others and in the collective. The witch wounds that come with being a woman who dares to live in full truth, and who really values truth above perception, which is ultimate medicine, I really feel on a collective level, because inside of us as women, we really hold keys to liberation on the planet at this time. And the more that we liberate from within and embody these new templates from within, the more we're really unbounding the energies that have really repressed and suppressed the power of life force, the power of Shakti, the power of Eros, the power of the divine feminine. And I really start off the conversation in that way to first hold this conversation through a field of prayer and protection, because in knowing you and how you've come to this place in the conversation, did not happen overnight. It's been likely one of the deepest prayers you've been in, constantly polishing the mirror and really getting to the root of what is coming up for you. And so I really feel that this conversation begins with a lot of sincerity, and not seriousness, but sincerity. Yeah, I just begin that. So why don't you tell us, Saige, what's going on with you, and why is this season of your life so different than other versions of Saige that I've met in the past?
First of all, thank you. Thank you, sister, for that very accurate and precise read, on the energetics. And yeah, there's been a lot to traverse over here. And as with my devotional path becoming really integrated in the energies of my body before sharing outwardly to the public field has become a more refined practice as I evolve. And so to be able to speak on this delicate time, as things have become more integrated and really landed in my body, and to be able to speak for the first time here with you in this sacred temple feels like an honor, a little bit of an edge, and we're going to go there because it's time. There's one thing to walk through the fires of purification, and it's another to then show others and speak on what we've traversed, so we can guide the way for others who may be surfing a version of what we're going through. And if not, the same theme, still that same, hero's journey, heroine's journey of, getting fortified through our stories of what it actually takes to really follow truth and let go sometimes of the things that not only have kept us safe and secure and comfortable, but things that we've built an identity around, right? Things that we've taught on. And it doesn't negate those teachings. They were true for as long as they were true. And this is the process of, our evolution. And I do feel a lot of us visionaries or leaders or way showers, those of us who choose to kind of be on the forefront of consciousness or choose to guide the way for others, tend to go through certain experiences so that we may speak to those experiences and kind of understand deeper the nuance of, what it takes to really say yes to the call of our heart. It sounds so simple on paper. Just follow your heart. And also, as we know, as we're collectively going through this purification process and clearing all these generational curses and these energies that we've been conditioned by that really don't belong to us in that organic template, it can be a lot. You can sometimes find that, you're living a certain reality, in these handcuffs in a way that were invisible to you previously. Something that's been clear to me is that, the more we become in tune with ourselves and our bodies and our truth and our frequency that feels like a full yes, the more that dissonance, even on the subtlest level, becomes painful. It speaks through the body. And so in the disillusionment of my marriage, as it once was constructed, this was not an overnight process by any means. This has been about, I'd say now, a 4-year process of really starting to feel the pulse of something else. And while also, honoring the prayers and the commitment and the devotion and the desire to tend to feel, while when God has another plan, it's one way or the other. I always say let go or get dragged, because one way or the other, if we're here truly listening and following that call, the time will come when it's time to take the leap. And yeah, so for me, there was because there's been so much reverence and so much compatibility and so much love and so much, shared values within this marriage. There's been a desire to exit that template with the same amount of love, reverence, devotion. And really for me, this inquiry of what else is possible for how we relate. And, does it have to be burn it all down? Even these words that we have of separation, divorce, they create so much fragmentation. And so to really, retemplate what's possible through staying in union while shifting the dimension of love, shifting the experience, transmuting the type of love, but maintaining, more than maintaining, even expanding in love. So this is really what I've been up to. I've been on a bit of a sabbatical as I've surfed these very large waves of the heart. I'll take a pause there. There's more to this story, as you know, and I feel the call to pause there and ground that in.
It's a big one. It's a really, really big time, and it impacts so many because it impacts, your ex-husband, it impacts your children, your extended family and community. And I know your heart, and I can only imagine that you've been holding all of that at once in consideration, in so much love, while also ultimately needing to not exclude or abandon yourself in the holding of everything else as well. And so let's go into, how did you get here to this point of really landing both feet on the timeline, your family actually landing, on the timeline fully of this is what's happening. There's a reformation of the family unit here. And what was that process like in being able to fully land in that, despite probably the many different parts of you that were probably in tension and opposition with each other, the navigation of probably the way that our ego or our minds want to do the right thing. And ultimately, how did you traverse these really deep waters of discovery and finding this level of clarity?
Such a beautiful question. Okay. Feel into that for a moment here. I wrote a book. My book is called Dancing with the Mystery. And this is written during this time of traversing some of these waves. I had what some people refer to as a false twin flame experience, where I encountered another soul at an ayahuasca ceremony. My wedding ring broke. For years, there was synchronicities and signs. I thought I was losing my mind. It was one of the most intense spiritual experiences I've had on this earth plane. Telepathic connections, synchronicities. This person would show up. I was convinced for years, like, this must be, my love. Like, what, all of these signs, all of these synchronicities. So it led me to take, because it was such an intense and visceral experience, dreams, it was such a part of my reality, even though it was taking place largely in the unseen. I felt compelled to write a book on it. I didn't, have any other way to really work with the energy outside of, because it wasn't coming into contact in the physical, and that I was still traversing these feelings of guilt and what is happening and confusion. And so I took that energy and channeled it into a book, which is not only about that energy. It's also about a little autobiography about the priestess path, and it's called Dancing with the Mystery. And it really poured out of me as this divine assignment. Ultimately, there was this period of time, really brought me to a lot of inner tension between, is it this man? Is it my partner? Is it this man? Is it, this kind of dance with the mystery of union, and the deeper inquiry into what this concept of the twin other is, the mirror soul is, the real divine union template. And if there was another higher octave of love that somehow my body felt hungry for, despite experiencing this beautiful, domestic, compatible soulmate relationship, there was a clear knowing that this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful man is not the other half of my soul, was not necessarily holding a map to the other half of my mission, right? There was this longing. And so again, in this false twin experience, it's being projected out onto this other man, which later, as I track back, I can see how clearly that was not it. And at the time there was, to work with that large of an energy, it's almost like you need something to project onto. So sometimes on these lands, a design of a temple will come through, and it's not actually meant to be constructed on this land. It's somewhere else. We need as human beings in this form, even if our souls expanded and can see the entire vision, sometimes I feel as that we need something like a canvas almost to project our energy onto as we're receiving this kind of future timeline in the now. This is how I best describe it now, retrospectively. So it was almost a knowing that there was someone else in my heart. And so this created, I would call, pretty major inner conflict for years, seeing the reality that honestly, has been quite lovely and transformational and beautiful and fulfilling in so many ways, while also knowing in my heart that something was missing. And to admit that while having had this beautiful life, this beautiful family, to say, there's nothing inherently wrong here, right? This is, my dream, many people's dream. And also something is missing. It doesn't receive a lot of external validation, right? Doesn't receive a lot of, there's, on that pathway traversing the heart, it really is an inward journey, because you can go to counselors, you can go work on the relationship, you can go externally, you can make your relationship a shadow work workshop and continue to write the gratitude lists and really stick with it. You can call it devotion. And also, at the end of the day, the truth in the heart remains. And so to really uncover, whether your relationship in a long-term relationship is asking for you to devote more and bring more flowers to the altar and tend the garden, or if you're being called elsewhere, is again such a personal journey. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, love. I mean, it's incredibly nuanced. And that's why I love that we're really presencing on this episode that this is your story. And I think for so many, this might activate the consideration that I think is really normal in relationship, which is always this like mystery, like you said with your book, Dancing the Mystery, a mystery of what if, or what else, or is something missing? And I do think that taking personal responsibility for being the love, being the pleasure, being the excitement, being the adventure that a lot of us crave, and not needing or projecting that onto another, expecting that another will come and complete that desire, but really embodying that from the inside out. And that being your offering to the vehicle of the container is ultimately a way to continue to be in integrity in your relationship, and also with you, your own dharma, and your relationship with God. I think a lot of the times in relationship when we're suffering, or we feel like something is wrong, or we're wanting to experience something more, a lot of us will go straight to it's because my partner doesn't fulfill those things, without going through the stages before, which is to ask myself the things that I think I want my partner to be more of. I'd be curious how much I'm embodying those things. Have I sort of projected my sense of success or adventure or passion or desire because like they embody all those things, and so I don't have to? It's like the greatest way to escape from the personal responsibility sometimes, or even like the most edgiest dharma that wants to come through. So there's like that side of the coin, right? Which is why I think you and I are both saying like the recommendation would always be to look within first, always. And I know, and that's why I started off the conversation saying, I know it was not an overnight decision. This has been 4 years of prayer, 4 years of consideration. I think you guys even like recommitted to the marriage, like throughout that 4 years of being like, actually, I'm choosing this fully. And that's what you're speaking to, like that with just more devotion, And so what we're speaking to is a woman who was willing to take responsibility, willing to look at the mirror, willing to devote for the sake of family, for the sake of lineage, for the sake of this real template of love. No denying it. And it's not false because it's the right thing for the moment. But eventually, no matter how much devotion you pour into the pot, and no matter how much shadow work you do, you realize like, why isn't anything moving the needle? And then tell us about that. Okay, so what happened? What happened after all the devotion, all the recommitment to the marriage? Then what did God do?
So as I'm writing this book that's initiating me, I really the book ends with like, okay, it turns out it's not. It's just like we get conditioned in these movies. That man is that who's going to complete me? It's a little bit of that conditioning that's just the inverted, version of true organic divine union in my perspective. And so, the book ends with the realization that this journey, this false flame journey, was really a journey home to God, to inner union within. It's not this man, it's not that man, it's neither. Or it's both, it's both and none of the above. This is a personal journey about inner union, harmonizing within. So from that place, from that realization, I really took a kind of, I'd say full surrender into like, it's really not about the other person. This is about devotion to God. And with that, I could be happy I can be happy with my soulmate. I can be happy on my own. I'm good. I have God, and how beautiful. I can fully accept that. And interestingly enough, when that full acceptance and redevotion happened, my mirror soul, divine counterpart, walked into my life when I least expected it. So I sit here in union with another, in a divine union that I knew in my heart existed, that I felt, that, I wrote a whole book about the energies of, again, kind of projected onto possibly the wrong character. But as this man showed up in the physical, which I can get more into the story if we go there, there was a full body activation. It took me 4 days to process. It was what, again, I recommitted. I'm not expecting. I'd surrendered. I'm good. I've got God now. I'm whole. And it's like, of course, when you reach that point in the ascension process, I was starting to have days without thoughts, really just like this full bliss present moment, which I feel, we're getting more and more into as we're able to kind of calibrate to these higher frequencies, really not looking, not looking outward. And when I least expected, it's this man, this undeniable connection who, I understand now when people say my other half, this term I didn't understand before. And again, not in that way that they can complete you, because to me, to even connect, for us to even come into each other's frequencies, we both had gone through a series of grueling and initiations, mine very non-physical, his very physical, and to connect and to, lock eyes, and it's like the mission just activated. There was this remembrance, like, of this love, the way that it feels somatically, the physical touch of it, and just this undeniable connection. And, it started as a friendship, of course, because of the current agreements that I was in, and quickly progressed into this undeniable connection. What I say and have come to realize is that what's true is true. So we can force connections, or there's like levels of devotion and tending that we can do to, nurture any relationship. And also we meet these people in life where, even with you, sister, there's like an undeniable connection and alliance we both recognized and felt, and, get to then breathe life into. And I feel like that, on the planet right now, my understanding is that a lot of these organic unions, these really high frequency dimensions of love experiences are trying to come into form, wanting to come into form, or God is guiding us to come into union. And I'm meeting more and more of these kind of, you could call it, I don't use the word twin flame, I like mirror soul, and it really is what lands for me. These connections where you can see it. It's this undeniable connection. And it's really mission oriented beyond all the romance and, like, what is a date? Like with this kind of love, you're not dating. It's just picking up wherever you left off with the mission. It's just purpose. And yeah, it's honestly, it's hard to put into words. It's more of a frequency felt sensation that's so completely undeniable. It just is. And so, yeah, really meeting this mirror soul support catalyzed, the actual earth plane courage to let that previous, agreement dissolve in the way that God was really guiding it to. Again, those kind of 4 years of somatically processing and releasing and starting to, question some of the previous agreements allowed for this energy to move in a gentle way. Didn't feel so much like ripping the Band-Aid off, as we had almost, been in preparation mode in many ways for the divergence and paths to finally present itself in this way. And ultimately, what it comes down to is when someone follows their heart, I really feel like it's a gift to everyone, even if the other partner doesn't see it as such in that moment. When one person is following truth, it's the whole family's truth, because truly, like, when one person is self-abandoning, so is the other partner.
Yes, so incredibly powerful. And I think what you're speaking to is a different template and a different octave of what love really is, like a type of love that sets us free rather than tries to control, or I don't have any other word other than to say manipulate, in order to avoid pain. And this is a really incredibly important conversation, because I believe that a lot of us have parents, have, like, even in our own bloodlines, and certainly, we know it as a collective story, like staying together for the kids, almost like a virtue, right? Like the virtue to loyalty. I'm not saying that loyalty is not a virtue, but sometimes we're loyal to something that is untrue. And when we're loyal to something that is untrue, it's because underneath that is fear, and underneath that is shame. And so anything that we continue to ripple or continue to teach our children and to normalize in our lineages, as on the surface, as much as it might look virtuous, right? Devotional on the surface level, there is, in this case, in this nuanced conversation, another possibility that actually it's a mask. It's a mask for the more scary, tender, vulnerable thing. And it's also a fear of probably looking like a failure, the failure, quote unquote, of a marriage. To me, that's such a, it feels like such an old paradigm way to look at love, as if it's like given and taken away rather than for it to just continue to evolve and transform. But these are the narratives that we've grown up with. These are the narratives that the collective has really ingrained in us. And I think it's, what you're speaking to in your own life. It's just this really radical reframe. And yeah, let's go into more. I have other questions. So in the discovery, and I just want to make it very clear to those listening, because it might have not felt totally clear, but originally Saige was referring to someone that she originally thought was the mirror soul, right? For many years, it activated something in her. And there was always a mysterious component to that, right? Only to discover that that was actually not it. It was bringing up for her a lot that she needed to see that might have been inherently missing, right? But that wasn't ultimately going to be reconciled or evolved or cultivated through that container with that person. And then there was, for the last 4 years, questioning of, where is this marriage going? How do we feel within the container of this marriage? And then this devotional, beloved frequency that she was going into and unifying with God. If I am in right relationship with God, the Tao, something greater than myself, my mission, right? Then no matter who I'm with, it's okay. I can accept things as they are, because it's not about something outside of myself. It's about the relationship that I'm having within, everything, within all of my relationships. It's the quality that I'm bringing to that, the presence, right? And in that acceptance, she then meets her beloved mirror soul partner now after marriage. So what was it like? What has it been like to transition this primary attachment figure, really, after 11 years with your ex-husband, to introducing this mirror soul, this other man, to your husband, to your family? What has that transition looked like? And how have you guys all navigated that? Hello, friends. Before we continue onward with this incredible episode, I want you to know of something very special that is taking place at the end of August in the northern mountains of Bali. This is untouched land at an eco-luxury retreat center overlooking the ocean. From August 24th to the 1st, I am co-hosting a ceremonial passageway, a soul-stirring rite of passage like immersion that will forever impact all of our lives lives and the purpose that we're here to really embody in this lifetime. So this is all happening during the Balinese celebrations of Ganesha. This is perfectly intentionally timed. Ganesha is the remover of obstacles. So envision our community meeting up in these mountains of Bali. Imagine us coinciding with this powerful celebration of Ganesha and attuning ourselves with the ancestral lands, with the greater prayer that the Balinese are holding to really be able to discover what removing obstacles actually means for us on an ancestral level, on a soul level, and on an embodiment level. This passageway is for visionaries. It's for artists, creatives, deep thinkers, deep souls, people stepping into their next octave of leadership and artistry. So we're coming together to shed old patterns. We're here to awaken new levels of aliveness and creative life force energy, creative liberation, embodied leadership that will ultimately influence, impact, and expand our purpose, our bodies of work, our love, our community, our confidence, our empowerment, and our life. If you want to book a free discovery call with me, visit lightmeetsdark.com. And I'm so excited to journey with some of you up in the mountains of Bali.
Thank you for that beautiful recap. And yeah, this is a great question. I would say navigating, still very much in process. And, as I said to you before we even hit record, there's this humility that I'm walking with currently, getting to share what I've walked through and getting to share these intricate layers and these pieces that I've met myself in, while also understanding the walk that's in front of me, that it still remains mysterious, as always on this mystery path. So, the relationship that I have with my children is very special. I'm parenting in a way that feels very authentic, really bringing these children in, really putting high value on emotional intelligence, on subtle energies, really supporting the rites of passage so that, these beautiful children know that they're not coming here to be conditioned to be what I think they need to be, or what we as parents or society tell them they need to be, but really drawing upon their organic gifts and calling forward, more of their soul embodiment and letting them guide and inform us of who they are at all times. So we have a very transparent and authentic relationship. Some people choose to go through this ascension process and then bring these beautiful light beings into the world. There could be more circling, who knows, that have that soul contract. These children came in, when I was in my mid-20s. So they've gone through some of my awakening process. They came in pre-2020, pre the great shift, right? So they're here very much, on their own journey. And so I'm reminded again and again that what they go through, they're choosing as well. And so, the modern day initiations are sometimes emotional and relational. They're not necessarily being sent to the mountaintops to, live in the woods for 10 days and hunt their own food. They're going through their own initiation process, here in society. And so anything that we traverse, because people look at me and they're like, your kids seem so light. They seem so happy. It doesn't seem to be affecting your kids, is what I've heard. And of course it is. Of course it's impacting them. And we've had these beautiful conversations and alchemical somatic release experiences around the way it's impacting them. We're just moving into that in the temple. We're moving into that fully. And to again, be in the sweet tenderness of it and even stumble sometimes to know that it hasn't been perfect, but to hold the vision for what is possible within the new earth families or blended family as the family just expands and another partner comes in, not to take away, but to really, bring bounty, blessings, beauty to everyone, including the former partner, right? And so this is really the vision that I hold, that I know, that I feel in my body is possible as we evolve. And I've seen some really beautiful, expansive moments throughout this process. It's really been a pretty epic soul curriculum for all of us, at our, my beloved now, who steps into this role as stepfather, right? As well as, the heart cracking open in ways that don't feel good. I personally simultaneously have been holding some of the highest bliss and love frequencies that, feel like heaven truly, alongside, needing to cry and scream and make these guttural, it brings up emotion now, but make these lateral noises as I release, someone that I've shared such a deep bond with. At least in the current ways in which we were. So it's been this dance, and it's been challenging at many times. And also, every time I've felt this is too hard, I don't want to do it. It's just God speaks through, like, this is what's in front of you. Keep walking, keep walking. This is what's in front of you. Feel it, feel it, feel it. And so, yeah, it is this dance, it's this dance. If anything, it's bringing us all closer to God. That's how I see it.
That's exactly that. I mean, to me, when I hear you share, that's exactly what it feels like. And that's the greatest retemplating, reprogramming, deconditioning journey we can all be on when we navigate these really human things. Because there's such an old culture around jealousy and competition and betrayal and needing to choose sides. And I mean, I'm even someone who at a very young age, since the age of 4, experienced that sort of betrayal energy of my own parents that led to divorce, that led to also being raised by my stepfather. And there was a narrative that there was a victim and there was a perpetrator. And so you really bring something really powerful, because when we really detangle from those narratives, there's just truth and the capacity and ability for each person in the dynamic to be with their part of the truth while simultaneously creating safety for another to experience their truth. And I think that that is love. That is the type of love that actually wants, like, so in, what's the term, like compersion, right? In like polyamory, it's not that I'm vouching or denying, that framework of relating. In my own world, I have space for all of it as long as there's truth. But in polyamory, there's a term called compersion, which is like genuinely receiving happiness in being able to witness your partner being happy with another. That when you witness them experiencing love or intimacy with another, that it doesn't spark betrayal. It doesn't spark like I'm losing something here, but like I actually just love you so much that anything that brings genuine happiness and like source connection to you is something that I can respect, and not only respect, but, be happy for. There is that concept. I'm not saying that that's a concept any of us have integrated. I think there's some rare beings on the earth that are actually really embodying that, but I do love that notion, because in the notion of compersion, there is this like different frequency of love, which is really wanting the best for the people that we love, even when we wouldn't choose that for ourselves, even when we don't actually benefit from it totally. Right. And there's that unconditionality. It feels almost like a little bit like Yeshua vibes, like the unconditional love. And I'm not here to make a virtue out of polyamory or anything. It's just speaking to expanded templates of love beyond the traditional format that we have all just made normal.
Ooh, my whole body is lighting up with this one. Yeah, there's so much here. And I feel like what you're speaking to beyond, me, beyond my experience, we are all one. So I'm experiencing this as the collective. There are other beings in the collective experiencing, surfing their own waves of this. And what you just spoke to is lighting me up, because I feel like, sister, this is such an important topic for these times, as, we are expanding our templates and our ways of relating. We are coming back into more interdependence. And so the words expanded love templates for the enlightened love experience woke me up in the night. And this was after like starting to get initiated into swimming with the dolphins here on Hawaii. I have a sister here who's like a dolphin in human form who's been taking us to the ocean. And it was receiving, although they didn't come this first time, I was receiving just the energy of these beautiful beings. And what I felt like they were teaching me was boundless love. Right? This innocent, boundless love, right? No possession, no control, no fear, just love, the frequency of pure love. And so I'm having this emotional release at the ocean, like holding hands with two sisters, like crying in these dolphin waters, realizing that my template is expanding, and that's scary, because what will people think? What does that mean? All of these questions that arise. And while polyamory isn't something that personally resonates for me, loving multiple people does. Loving, being the expression of love does. That does resonate, not capping how much I love because of someone else's fear or someone else's perceived belief that they possess me. No, right? Not in this lifetime. And so, that what's coming through right now is just, in my own exploration, in really advocating for an expansion of love instead of a separation from love, and just expanding the children. Look, there's more caretakers that love you now. How beautiful. Look, these two beings, with prayers will in time have their own relationship. Look, I still love your father. Nothing will ever stop me from loving and supporting and honoring that man, right? While I'm experiencing a different dimension of love that's very, very true and has always been in my heart that I won't deny.
I can already see and feel that topics like this, get used to it, folks, because it's 444 here. And we're entering a field of non-dual, non-duality more and more, truly an integration and a disintegration of opposites, right and wrong, left and right, good versus evil. Does that mean that I deny that there's true darkness in this world that we need to protect ourselves, each other from? No, I'm actually completely aware that there are real energies in this world that are parasitic, that are extractive and siphoning. So I can hold that while simultaneously holding this deeper consideration that this topic is awakening, because I know it's going to stir up some of that duality in people, when we start talking about polyamory, when we start talking about, union itself, because there's so many different conversations in the spiritual communities and in conscious communities right now that have been sparked by many, and everyone's sort of taking their stance on it. And I personally, it must be that Taoist ancestral piece for me. It's just very hard for me to not be able to hold complexity, many truths at once. And the reason why I say this is because in what you shared, I'm sure it's going to spark conversation around what about, protecting your union with your ex-husband? What about protecting your children? What does that mean for children growing up with two different fathers per se? Any confusion that might bring up for them, and any of that negative projection that you might have faced or will potentially face or have been afraid of facing. How do you find your connection to God and truth and purity amongst the possibility of being misunderstood?
Yes, such a good question. Sister, it just makes me more convicted because there have been, there's been energy thrown, family, myself ultimately, but that would be the biggest one, is that the self shame, the self questioning, the self doubt of what I've always known. And really, as I've been through this purification process, stripping, okay, well, if it's self, where did that come from? Because it's not organic self. If there is any kind of doubt of our authentic path, that's usually coming from some type of conditioning. So getting in that inquiry of any kind of, self-criticism that came up through this journey is getting to see whose is that? Okay, is that parents? Is that neighbors? Is that, really getting to excavate has just brought me deeper and deeper into conviction of why it's so important. And honestly, how fucking proud I am of people who choose to follow their truth, because honestly, I had no idea. I had no idea that my Middle Eastern, Iranian side would need to have a clearing around, be what it means to be a woman that's divorced, that was in my DNA, this very real survival fear around choosing to liberate oneself in that way. And so it's really been, again, for me, this is not everyone's path. There are these beautiful, I feel, organic sacred unions that are meant to last a lifetime and keep together the preservation of that household. For me and my soul, and so much of the revillaging work that I do, I can see why I would choose an expanded version of family and what that would look like. My children are your children, and it's a little bit more fluid. Again, it's not one template. It's not one size fits all. It's been a deepening for me, with God and with just this pure, excavation that's gotten to happen for me. Everyone gets a different curriculum. For me, divorce has been hard it's been one of the hardest things I've done. And it's also been so incredibly liberating and brought me deeper and deeper to God and new levels of self-love and truth and liberation that, I can't help but think this is exactly what my soul needed.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing that. And it just completes the loop on this like non-dual lens that I really feel the collective is moving into, because I think what you're speaking to is no matter the format, because for some people, the greatest divine blueprint of family and union might look like just the traditional template, and that being the greatest living vehicle of devotional love, like sanctified union, and people who are choosing that, so long as that choice is being made from heart in the same way that you're giving yourself permission to, is equally as important as these other non-traditional expanded templates of love, right? So like just holding with compassion, the complexity that it's really, we're speaking to the quality, because you can have a monogamous relationship or a polyamorous relationship, a divorce, staying together forever, and it all fluctuating on degrees of healthiness based off of the skills and development and practices that actually cultivate the relationship. It's never really about the form. It's more so about the sanctity of the quality of energetics we bring to it, the actual relationality. So just holding all of it in such a field of reverence, no matter where someone's belief stands, because it's all so valid. Absolutely. So for you, I really feel that one of your amazing codes in this world has been and is revillaging. So can you tell us about what that really means? Like, what does that mean for us to come into a culture of starting to revillage? What does that look like on the island? What is the future of revillaging, and why?
I mean, this is a huge one. I feel as though we can look around in the world and see that some of the ways we've been orchestrating society and civilizations hasn't necessarily been working out the best, right? And so a lot of us are feeling that call forward to really reculture, right? So we call it, we've used the word retemplating a lot, but really like refine the energetics of how we're showing up to life, essentially, and asking why. Why are we doing this ritual? Why are we engaging in this way? Why is this actually really true? Is this actually really benevolent? Is this coming from my golden heart? And this is what I feel the process. If we could summarize what's happening on this planet, it feels like as people awaken, we're really getting a chance to examine how we're showing up and how we desire to be living. Do we want to be in this environment, sharing our life force in this way? Or is there a more sovereign, empowered, authentic way that we can be running our energy? Is there a land that's calling us home, right? So we're kind of in this inquiry process. So for me, revillaging is really, it's more internal. I get a lot of people who message me and they're like, where do you live? I want to, oh my gosh. And what I am consistently kind of holding the mirror on is like, it's an inner state. Where I live is a dimension. And so I can be here, I could be there, but where I live is a dimension. And I didn't get there by taking an airplane. I got there by taking a lot of inner journeys, right?
Yeah.
Because I've seen people, specifically move to this island and get blipped out. The nervous system, or you see these communes or, intentional communities that there's a lot of drama. There's a lot of, energies that are frenetic and not actually harmonious. Why? Right. So this is really what I've been in study, because I know that we're returning to these interdependent ways of living so that we can unify and ask, what are we creating? It's a more sustainable way to move going forward than everybody needing to climb the ladder of success and feel burnt out. So I've been in deep study of, what it really means to village. And I always come back to, it's an inner paradigm experience first. We must become it. We must become it. So, something I love to really emphasize is getting clear on your role. In this world, a lot of us have been told to kind of be everything to everyone. I really noticed this when I became a mother and was like, where is the support? Like, what? And that's changing now. It feels like there's more reverence for that role. And as people are reintroducing rites of passage, and we're starting to see what an honor it is to age, what an honor it is to become, these titles instead of try to, hold on to whatever it is, that society puts on the billboard. So, it's all shifting. And really, the opportunity I feel that we have is, again, not just to live in close proximity and share in life with each other, but really to be in proximity to those councils. Like the council to me is the heart of the village, because when you sit in a circle and you hear from everyone, you hear from the kids, this is a practice I do with my children. You hear from them. You hear from the elders, you really get this clearer vision of reality than we sometimes have. We can project, from our own nuclear household perspective. You can really start to see what's actually happening, in these ecosystems, what people are really needing. Yeah, you can really start to expand your perspective on compassion, really. You can hear the different lenses that people have on their experience and start to architect, okay, well, what would that look like then if we were living life in closer proximity? Why are there elders in old folks' homes? Why are there mothers that are burnt out when there's this very natural, organic, symbiotic relationship that we can all have with one another? But again, a lot of people try to do that by bringing proximity, but people's wounds are still running the show. And it's like, oh no, let's just go back to the nuclear household. No wonder we live alone. Fuck that, right? And so it's through this reculturing, through this inner work that we do, through this inner revillaging, that we become safe sanctuary so that we are actually, in right relationship once we're in that proximity with one another. I see the potential that we have just organically as these beings that come into the world at every phase of life. There's so much potential we have to be contributing and receiving from the greater web of community. I see young boys that are in high school, and I'm like, with all that testosterone, you could be building Auntie's house and getting an education while being of service to the community in a way that's really purposeful, right? And with these adolescent girls, like, what if as an adolescent girl, instead of being in middle school, you were taking care of babies and supporting the cooking and learning these life skills, entrepreneurship, right? So there's a lot of potential as we remember the gold that each other are, when someone sits in front of you, like, this is such a gift to get to be in front of a whole universe and to really move away from extraction thinking of what can I get from this person, or how can I, whatever, to how can we come together and expand the greater field and just create more heaven through my God-given gifts, through your God-given gifts. And it's really fun. It's really fun to apply this with the children, to really give them opportunities to feel purposeful because they love it. In our society, so much of it's like, get out of the way, go to school. Let's just put you over here so I can be over here so I can survive. When really, there are these organic ways that we come together, and the kids want to be feeling purposeful. I think it's why there's so many people that feel lost and depressed, and, because they're kind of told, go make something of yourself instead of what are we creating? What are we creating? You have a purpose here. You have a place here. Your place is so important in this society. We need you. Like, at a young age, to these kids, it makes me want to cry. And with our elders too, we're not casting you out at the end of your life. We're honoring your wisdom. So this is really what I see. Simple, right?
Right. Oh my gosh. And it's like organic, like a deeper, more ancient, blood memory, really, inside of all of us can recognize what you're saying as truth, the truth in which we've come from, the truth of like our more extended ancestors, and yet so fractured, so fragmented in a modern world. Entire businesses that commodify off of the elderly and the traditional education system. And what you're bringing is the return of an old way and really restoring. To me, it's like God's work. It really is. Everything that you're sharing. Like, we have so many people questioning our purpose, our value in this world, like why we're even here. And that type of confusion, is unnatural. It's like really unnatural, and I think what you're speaking to is, it also makes me emotional because of how important this topic is. And it completely goes back to what you said of like the rites of passage, like understanding where in the spiral of life, womanhood and manhood, are you existing in now? And instead of denying that or feeling lost or alone in that, how can you be supported exactly where you are? How can you be validated for your existence and know the gift of this exact season of your life? And the elder is no more important than the child, the mother, no more important than the maiden. It's like everyone having gifts to contribute to the greater whole. And I think living in village and having community and what we're all feeling like there's a return to, it's so important. It's so not easy. And what you're speaking to is like, and this is actually something I've said to a client before, like who was like interested in developing conscious community. I'd be curious to hear more from your perspective as well. It's like, there's like the version in our heads of like what that looks like and like how romantic that sounds, like it feels so, it's like very like Aquarius energy. So it's like this like future innovation, future timeline. And like, thank God we can dream that into vision, right? There is no change without the ability to dream and vision what has not yet been created. But the actual cultivation, the actual everyday devotion, the actual tending, the humility that comes with that is, it is an initiation, I imagine, that requires a huge level of maturity, especially because everyone brings their nervous systems and their stuff to family, to lineage, to community, to groups, to the village. And just because, a group of people come together with a true heart's intent to co-create harmoniously doesn't mean, again, quality of relationships. It's not about the form, it's the quality. It doesn't mean that we have the tools to communicate. Like, how do we repair when the inevitable conflicts arise? Really close proximity. How do we create a field that is clear and transparent where we don't have to hide from or necessarily mask or suppress, but like, how do you develop like I can't think of another word other than clear field, like to be in right relationship with self while being in right relationship to other, and those existing simultaneously, So yeah.
Yeah, this is where I feel protocols come into play in many ways. We're orphaned, right? We're, because of the rites of passages that may have been lost, there aren't a lot of these, the leaders that we've seen growing up are like the president and the doctors. And, sometimes, there are many beautiful authority figures. And sometimes, what it feels like the world we're returning to right now in this world is a return to the heart. So authorities that are really leading from the heart. And so it's beautiful to see, Indigenous elders that are taking their proper seat. For me, a lot of the work that I'm doing here on the islands is informed every step of the way by my Indigenous kumu. Right? I could, in many ways, bless you, Lena Allah, there's these eyes that are so wise that have walked a path before. Not that we need that constant validation, although having that expanded mastery. So again, like you said, no one's more important, right? The elder's not more important than the child. The child has wisdom, a lot of times a more evolved consciousness even. And also on this lived earth plane experience, there are these rites that we go through. So honoring our elders when they are initiated, right, feels super important. So I've heard it described as synergy rather than hierarchy, which kind of takes away the pedestal aspect. So we're still sitting in council, yet we are honoring one another's mastery.
Yes.
Right. Not trying to alpha places that we haven't been yet, really like knowing when we can just surrender and receive from different codes, whether it's from a 3-year-old or an 83-year-old. And really, being willing, I think beyond even the protocols, that foundation takes a willingness, for it's like the shared intentions and the willingness to do the work, to recognize again that it's not just proximity, it's really, the devotion to showing up to do that work. And, in my experience from living in different versions of community, I still see these expanded villages of light that will be emerging on the planet. I've been experiencing and kind of practicing in versions of conscious community. It hasn't always been easy. And so much of the friction and the conflict has been where the beauty has come from, because when people meet in that friction and can sit in a circle or a council and move through it in live time, move through that fire, not just in a one-to-one setting, like we see in the nuclear household hidden away, but really with eyes of community witnessing. How powerful is that? To go, wow, like I'm still loved, I'm still safe here. This is how who I'm being impacts the environment. This is how, getting to share in that way. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to really be seen. Right. And the ego is the only one that's afraid of being seen, because ultimately as we purify that ego that's like, I don't want to be seen in this. It's like, that's not even your real self. So as we
Totally.
strip away, what I've really come to see is that the experiences I've had of living in community that are seamless, almost like effortless, with very little conflict, come from being in the field of others who are as devoted to the inner work. So there's not a lot of conflict because the purpose is so clear. And so it's almost this telepathic, synergistic, like, really easy to move through any snags or tension points because the intentions are so clear. We know where we're headed. We're headed for heaven. Let's move through this, right? So.
Ooh, so beautiful. And I think you can take that framework from village, community, even down to like relationship. It's like you want to choose a partner or a teammate that's equally devoted to evolving through the container of the relationship, no matter what. And someone who you deeply trust their nervous system. Yeah. So as we come to, like a really beautiful closing of this conversation, I do, want to invoke one more piece here just to like really circle and close a loop on the conversation. So as you've been experiencing this massive transition, not only you are experiencing it, your ex-husband, your new partner, children, and family, I would be curious when all is said and done, and I realize that you're not on the other side of it. No one is. It's continuously evolving and it hasn't been navigated, but you are navigating it. Why do you feel that this decision and what the choice for your family to reorient in this way, how has that benefited everyone involved? Like, has that really been in service? I mean, of course, it would have to be in some way, but I'm curious to hear more about ultimately choosing to do something so challenging, so risky, so scary. What has that ultimately been in service to, and why is everyone involved somehow growing and evolving through this retemplating?
It's calling, in my perspective, it's calling everyone forward to really examine what true love is, what true love means for myself. I've been reflecting on the definition of unconditional love and true love. For all parties involved. There's two pieces here. The one piece is that the field of divine God-led union, when God is orchestrating in union, you don't have to know why. You don't have to question the Father because there's a plan beyond what we can comprehend. And the way that I see it is that organic God-designed template of union. The frequency is so high and so palpable. Kind of, again, what I spoke to, where there's very little tension in it. Pure. That the field that it creates expands all hearts around it. And even if sometimes that expansion, as you named right when we started our call, that expansion of light kicks up shadow, doesn't always feel comfortable. Light doesn't always feel like bliss. It can sometimes kick up what needs to be felt. What a gift. What a gift. So it's the purification process, the deepening with God. It's that, when there is that undeniable field of love, it benefits bigger, more than I believe we can comprehend. And this can happen in sisterhood too. When you're in fields that are so pure and the love is so pure and unconditional and unwavering, it's such a reflection of God's love that, again, I feel like it's pretty evident who benefits when you're in the room with it. And where it feels almost incomprehensible is how that impacts the communities and the planet. This is why I feel God is really asking for a lot of these sacred unions to come into form, right? In the right timing. And sometimes, at least on this initiate's path in the journey, it's not always just like, here it is. Sometimes it's letting go of, whatever's standing in the way. I wrote once, like, when you pray for God's highest timeline, like, prepare to let go of everything standing in the way of it. And people don't always want to do that. You're like, God, manifest, I want that. And it's like, well, you got to let go of your illusions. You got to let go of your illusions. And that's.
Yeah. And I almost feel like this conversation, to me, it feels almost like it comes from the future. It sounds so funny. Not to say that like there aren't others living this exact thing that you're going through, and that there haven't been examples of people doing this in a conscious, good way. But I say that it is coming from the future because I have this sense that we're going to see a lot more reconfigurations. Why? Because there's more safety in the collective field than ever for truth to exist without like imprisonment, without being shackled, without being persecuted, without being, repressed. And I think that's this like, that's happening right now. And so when there's more truth, there's more nuance and complexity. So I think this conversation is, I have a prayer that it just continues to reach the hearts of those navigating something similar, whether they're currently navigating that or will navigate it. And I hold that in equal measure to the unions that, withstand a lifetime. And so just holding the light of union here in the greatest prayer. Yeah. And I'm just so incredibly grateful, Saige, for you offering your story, your heart, your wisdom, your mastery, and your embodiment as a vehicle to really share and give permission to the hearts of many to really follow the heart, no matter what, to follow truth, and to do that with maturity, to do that with grace, to do it with compassion, because there is that nuance here of like, we can have this like younger rebellious self that's like, I'm just going to run through the streets in my rebel fire, burn it all down. My truth is my truth, right? And I think what you're bringing is a frequency that you're still navigating, with humility, but that there's a deeper devotion to standing in one's truth while also understanding the impact that your truth might have on others. And then how do you navigate that in a way that is compassionate, that is conscious, and as loving as possible, and forgiving on all ends as possible. Because I think finding that nuance and that maturity is really important. Yeah. When choosing truth.
Yeah. Understanding our impact of our words, of our actions, understanding that we are impacting, especially if we've chosen to bring children into this world, we are impacting, 7 generations potentially that we can track. We are the future ancestors. So yeah, to really be with our choices, to be in full integrity, to me as a mother feels like it's just standard, right? And to speak to what you spoke to, it's an important inquiry to recognize, are we remaining loyal or are we self-abandoning, right? And to really take your time. This is, to anyone listening that could be potentially in their own version of this inquiry, whether it's a job or a location or a love. If you're in that kind of, inner conflict or inner inquiry, I love that you called it, what did you call it? A reorientation.
Like a re-templating or reorganization, reformatting.
Such a sweet way to put it. It really is, at the simplest, beyond the emotions, that's really what it is on an energetic level. So if you're in, my prayer is if you're in this place yourself, you give yourself the space and time to listen. Getting mirrors can be supportive, and also nobody is going to know like your own heart. And sometimes people are projecting their own fears from what they've gone through in childhood or this and that. And so really being still, to doing whatever we need to do to be able to get a closer relationship with God and really be able to trust that voice of God is, to me, it's everything when navigating such huge decisions. Because really, if we're in humility, our humans don't know what we're doing. God does. And so to hand our lives over, if we're here in true service, to hand our lives entirely over and go, I don't know why you're willing this for me, but you obviously are God and I'm yours. So I will do what I need to do to anchor, my divine destiny here on this planet for the benefit of all. It's how I personally take the weight of the responsibility of impact off of my shoulders, because as a human, I don't want to navigate it from ego. I want to be instructed by the divine to ensure, that it takes.
So beautifully said, love. Thank you for this. Wow. compelling conversation. And for those who are interested in checking out Dancing with the Mystery, the book that Saige mentioned, wanting to connect to the Rosewater Temple, wanting to just see what offerings Saige has, that is all listed in the show notes. We're so grateful, sister, for your wisdom. And wow, the level of purity just coming through you is such a gift, and really the presence of the Divine Mother that you embody and are bringing forth in this conversation, I recognize so deeply. So thank you. And yeah, is there any last final words you want to leave with our audience?
Just my gratitude to you, sister, for stewarding this beautiful, really pristine field, sharing your voice medicine and inviting me on. Any last words for listeners is follow your heart, let go and let God. We are love.
Wherever you have just tuned into this episode in space and time, I want to personally thank you for your presence here. It is your listening that continues to feed the field of the Center of Destiny podcast. And so my request and my encouragement is that if you're loving these episodes, please do subscribe, follow, rate, and share the podcast to those who will benefit from these visionary conversations. And if you want to stay connected, you can always find me at Tara of Destiny on Instagram or at thecenterofdestiny.com. Would love to connect with some of you on a more personal level and deepen in my ability to support you upon your path. So much love to all listeners, and thank you so much for meeting me in this dimension.